It's the New Horizon Radio. We're here at Midsummer Place Shopping Centre on Purple Tuesday, which you'll be hearing a lot about kind of in the media. It's a global initiative to make retailers and businesses a lot more conscious of what they're doing for people with disabilities. And it's great to be joined in the studio by Hannah Burgess, who's one of our stylistas here at Midsummer Place. Hello, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, great to have you with us in the studio because I think it's going to be very interesting to get your insights into what it's like going shopping, just basically doing the everyday things that a lot of us take for granted, but you have a visual impairment, and for you it's a completely different world when you're out there going around the shops, and so important that people can see things from your perspective, I guess. And tell us a little bit about Purple Tuesday. What's the whole idea behind it?
So, as you said, Purple Tuesday is a global accessibility initiative, and the aim is for businesses to basically make themselves more accessible. So businesses that are being involved with Purple Tuesday have to commit to making at least one change to be driving forward and to making it known that they're doing something to be more accessible. And that can be for any kind of disability. Obviously, accessibility is very broad, and the change that they make can impact a smaller section of disability or obviously a larger section as well, but that's what they're committing to in Purple Tuesday.
So what kind of things are businesses doing? What kind of things could businesses consider doing? What are some examples?
There are so many things that businesses can do, and I think a lot of the time they're actually really simple things. Something that I think is so helpful that businesses can do is, especially for shops, is to leave their door open, and I mean that in a very literal sense. Having a door open to a shop, it makes things so much easier for people who are wheelchair users, people who have limited mobility with their arms, for example, and also myself as a blind person with a guide dog, having that door open means that a dog is very easily able to go in and out of that shop without that sort of hassle of the door. And that's obviously just one very small thing that can be changed in a business without any cost. It's really effective and it can affect a lot of people. The other changes that they can make can obviously go on to things like staff training, which I think is obviously really crucial. And basically just expand on it from there. So there are very physical things that people can do, and there are also a lot of things sort of within the company that they can change as well.
And I think little things like that just makes life easier for a lot of people. For me, it's trying to get a buggy around with children, screaming children, and trying to not let my children run out into the street while I'm trying to get a shop door open.
Yep. It's
really challenging. And it's the same for people that use wheelchairs, and as you say, for blind people, just trying to get about. So could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey, and kind of what life is like for you?
Yeah, of course. So I was born with my visual impairment. I've got a genetic condition called albinism, but I do have a lot of other conditions that have followed on from having that. As I say, I was born with my visual impairment, so my vision has been pretty much the same for all of my life. I've been a white cane user since I was really, really young. I think I got my first cane when I was 5, and I've been a guide dog owner since I was 13 as well. I'm one of the youngest people in the UK to have ever had a guide dog, and I've had guide dogs ever since then. So in between my guide dogs, I've gone back to using my cane, but now I have a guide dog at the moment again, which is wonderful. And as I say, this is how my life has always been. So everything I do is the way I've always done it. I've not had to, people who sort of have a sudden vision loss, for example, they kind of have to readapt and learn how to do new things. All of the things I do are the way I've always done them. So I've always found a way of doing it and just carried on with that. It's always been sort of working it out, finding the best solution, things like that.
Yeah, and this is normal for you. You've just got to adapt to the way the world is, and it's not easy, and your life could be so much easier if people had a little bit more consideration of what it's like for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think that's the same for so many people as well, even people who aren't disabled. Having people being more understanding that people just have different needs in general day-to-day life can have a massive impact.
This is the New Horizon Radio, and it's Purple Tuesday, which means we're talking all about kind of what life is like for people with different disabilities, specifically going around shops, but just generally trying to make their way in the world. And there's so many challenges, and I would urge everybody to follow Hannah on the socials, because it's a real insight into your life. You share a lot, and it's brilliant that you do that, because it's stuff that people don't even think about, but some of the things that you have to go through, just your day-to-day life, and some of your videos are brilliant, but it's just like showing the way that you have to do the kind of the everyday things that a lot of us take for granted.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. I started sort of making videos and putting content out there around the pandemic. Actually, it was just I just had my son. He was born literally just after we started the initial first lockdown in 2020, and I started making content then. And a big part of the reason I started putting content out there is just for the education. There's just so many things that people don't know, and a lot of it is really simple. And if people did know those things, it could have a big impact on a lot of people. Of course, a lot of the content I make does surround my visual impairment, and I do talk about things from my personal perspective, being blind and things like that. But a lot of the time, I always call it accidentally accessible, but there are so many things that people can do that then go on to actually impact a whole range of people, even if they weren't intending it to. And I just think things like that are so important to obviously speak about, and just to get out there a little bit more how easy it can be to just make some small changes that really do impact people.
And I think also, like, what struck me when I was looking at your Instagram is the way that your Instagram descriptions are kind of descriptions of what the videos look like as well as what's happening in the video. So it will say Hannah, a young blonde woman, is standing in a bathroom wearing a red t-shirt, and she does, and you kind of think, okay, yeah, you wouldn't even realize that if you were watching the video, you could hear the sound, but you wouldn't necessarily know the context of what's going on. And that sort of visual description is really helpful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that I actually, almost embarrassingly from my point of view, didn't start adding to my content until, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago, when I really started putting it on absolutely everything. Because the more you grow and the more people you realise are seeing your content, you start to think about how different people access it. And I had noticed just that it could be something that would really help. And actually, I know that if I was looking at other people's content, that would help me. If other people were to describe their content, then it would really, really help me to be able to consume that content, especially things that are, you know, things being marketed to people, showing a product or things like that. Influencer culture is huge now, and you get so many people constantly trying to promote products and saying, oh, this product does this, and I have no idea what they're talking about. Oh, buy this t-shirt, but what does that look like? It's really hard to consume all of that sort of media when you are blind, and so putting that really small description that's quick and it's easy to do, it has a big impact. People who might use a screen reader, for example, to access their phone or their content and things like that they're looking through, if you pop that in the caption, then screen reader's going to read that out to whatever visually impaired person is using it. There are a lot of other people who use screen readers, not only blind people, but it can just be really beneficial. Midsummer actually has been putting photo and video descriptions on all of their content, which is wonderful, especially to have someone or a place that's so close to me. I've lived in Milton Keynes all my life, and so to have this community now aiming to be more accessible is it's special. It's really big impact, and it's nice to see those changes.
I think it is, and I think one of the things we do really well here in Milton Keynes is just take new ideas on board, and we love doing things differently and just being the first ones to blaze the trail for doing things that are a little bit different, but the way that things ought to be done. And it's a fantastic example. And I guess it must be so difficult, fashion, for people with visual impairments, when you're trying to buy clothes and choose what you want to wear. It's not just knowing what your clothes look like, you need to know what everybody else is wearing, so you know if you're going to be, you might be like, oh, flares would be really, really cool to wear, but if nobody else is wearing them, you would have no idea. I think they're coming back in, I've no idea.
I'm wearing flares now, so please say they are.
I think they probably are, but I have no clue. So that was one of the things that Midsummer Place are doing with their website. In terms of shopping in the centre here, what are some of the adaptations that have been made and some of the things that have been done well here?
Actually, this is something that I've been working quite closely with Midsummer on, in how they can be more accessible. And there's not that many things that I could sort of suggest. Midsummer in general is really accessible. They've got a lot of really good things going for them. All the spaces here are really open. There's loads of seating. Everything's on one level as well, which is quite obviously very accessible. There's loads of disabled parking. You can get in and out of the car parks, the multi-storey. There's a lift, escalators. You've got multiple options there. Again, something I mentioned earlier about doors being open on shops. All of the doors in Midsummer are always open. All of the shop doors are. And it's fantastic. There are so many really positive, accessible features that are already here.
And is Milton Keynes a great place to live for people with disabilities? Because it's been so well designed, I think. You've got all of the underpasses, you've got very few stairs, as far as I can tell, trying to get around the city centre. And I think it's, you know, compared to some of the places that you might go, it's probably one of the better.
Yeah, I was just going to say, there's good and bad everywhere, and there are some things in Milton Keynes that I think could be better, but in general, I do think it's really accessible. I love living here. I have, as I say, I've lived here all my life, but I've also travelled to quite a few other places, so you can really compare the two. Milton Keynes is fantastic for a whole lot of reasons. Honestly, one of the only things that springs to the top of my mind is a lot of the time there are automatic doors that aren't working, which can be a bit of a problem. But as to think that that's the only problem I can think of off the top of my head speaks volumes, I think.
I think there's a lot of automatic doors with buttons.
Yes.
And if you can't find the button, that must be really irritating.
Yes.
Because they don't just open when you walk towards them. And do you know what I find? It's automatic doors that open towards you and smack you in the face when you come
Absolute nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. If I didn't have my guide dog in those situations, I would be getting hit in the door, hit in the face by a door.
Got hit in the face in B&Q once by a door
nightmare.
that opened towards me, and I was, but I was running towards the door because I was in a hurry, and it just nearly knocked me over, and everybody laughed.
Everything just becomes a YouTube moment all straight away, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, are there any specific practices or training that you'd recommend for businesses to help staff with assisting visually impaired customers? What kind of things can they be including in their induction and their training?
I can really only speak from a non-professional sort of perspective on this, but I think a lot of the time it's just simply the fact that businesses or staff even within businesses aren't trained on how to even approach someone who's disabled. I think people are so scared to even say the word disabled these days because they're so worried about offending someone that they just become too scared to sort of offer that assistance and ask what people might need. It's the sort of thing that I would really, really encourage people to do. If you're not sure how to support someone that's disabled, ask them. The best thing you can do is just ask what things you might be able to do for them, because everyone's needs are really different. Speaking myself as a blind person, my brother's blind as well. And a lot of the time, the things that I need and the things that help me aren't the same things that help him. And people would know that if they were just to simply ask. Don't get me wrong, I think there is a massive gap in staff training when it comes to even talking things about guide dogs. I was in a shop in Milton Keynes literally the other day, and one of the staff members tried to stroke my guide dog, and when I told them that they couldn't stroke him because he was working, they were really surprised at that. And you think that's, in my head, something really simple that people should know. And I think that's a massive part of it is it's the awareness and the education surrounding disabled people that needs to improve.
I think it's just basic. I don't know. It's like manners, isn't it? You wouldn't go up and stroke somebody else's child without asking.
100%.
Okay. And what do you hope businesses and individuals can take away from initiatives like Purple Tuesday? I mean, obviously, we don't want it to just be one day of the year. These need to start, getting behaviours in place that are going to be normal for people. Yeah,
exactly. And I think once you get yourself into that mindset that you want to make a change and you want something to be better, if you make a small change and you see that impacting people, I think you're much more likely to then continue to find things that you can improve on. And I think it's almost a bit of a snowball effect that once you realise that the small things can have a big impact, they'll carry on and you'll keep making those small changes. And in the end, you'll end up with somewhere that's actually really accessible and really open and really inclusive for those people.
It's the New Horizon Radio. It's Purple Tuesday all day today, right the way through. But we want it to become Purple life, I guess. And I guess there's things that we should be doing today because it's Purple Tuesday that need to become habit forming and need to become things that we do every day. And what would you say is the one thing that you wish people understood a bit better about people that have visual impairments?
I think it's always been the same thing with visual impairments, is that people just don't understand how really broad the spectrum can actually be. As I said earlier, I've been blind all my life, and all I have ever had is comments from people: you don't look blind, you're too young to be blind. Someone told me I was too pretty to be blind once, and I think they meant it as a compliment, but it really, really wasn't. I just need people to people shouldn't have to justify their disability at the end of the day. And I think there's, again, this massive culture, especially online at the moment, where people just get accused of faking their disability all the time. You can't fake blindness well enough to get a guide dog. Do you know what I mean? Don't get me wrong, I know that you never know everyone's story completely, but actually that's exactly the reason why you shouldn't question it. Someone shouldn't have to justify their disability for you to believe them. And understanding that people's eyes aren't going to look a certain way, that they might be able to make eye contact with you, that they're going to be able to see some things. Some people might have light perception, some people might see nothing at all, and some people, I've got a full field of vision, but it's extremely bad quality, so I can't see anything at all clearly. And again, whenever people question me about my eyesight, I feel the need to explain that, because I don't feel like they're going to believe me, and that's what really needs to change. People need to just accept the fact that visual impairment can mean a whole range of things.
Because you were describing what it's like in one of your social media posts, and it sounds awful. It sounds worse than not being able to see at all, because it's like everything's moving and shaking and moving around the whole time.
Yeah, so as I say, I have a full field of vision, but nothing's really clear. Everything's quite blurred all of the time. But on top of that, I have another condition called nystagmus, where it's an involuntary eye movement, so my eyes move from side to side all the time. I also have, they kind of go hand in hand. It's another condition that then makes things look like they're moving. So sometimes things look like they're moving from side to side. Sometimes they look like they're moving forwards and backwards. So toward me, that's really tough. And yeah, it makes me dizzy, it makes me nauseous, all that kind of stuff.
And it must be very scary just walking down the street with that happening in your field of vision and trying not to be terrified that you're about to step into the road or something.
Yeah, you know, I think there's a whole mixture of emotions that come along with that. I'm very used to it. It's, as I say, it's the way my vision's always been. Just quite recently, I've had quite a big change in my vision, and it's been really stressful, actually, because I haven't had any big changes in my vision in my adult life. So that's been really difficult to adjust to, but having my guide dog makes all of that getting around so much easier.
Yeah, fantastic. And what would you say is the sort of the message that you'd like to share with businesses or the public for Purple Tuesday, if you could kind of leave them with a thought for Purple Tuesday?
I would just, as I said earlier, I would love for people to understand that it's the small changes that can make a big difference. It's feeling included. And when I was doing sort of a little bit of research about Purple Tuesday, I read a statistic that said 70% of disabled people, if they receive bad customer service or they feel they've been discriminated against by a business, they won't return. And 70% is a massive number. That is a huge amount of people that you could be having, obviously, their customer and then not getting it because of something really small. I think the accessible experiences end up really sticking out to you. I've had a few wonderful, really accessible experiences within Milton Keynes, some with local businesses and some with other. Wagamama's, for example, are a company who provide large print menus, and they have it in all of their restaurants wherever you go. That is the only restaurant in Milton Keynes that I know that does that. Out of the whole of Milton Keynes, that is the only one place that I know I can confidently go and be given a large print menu, which means I can independently choose my own food. Anywhere else that I was going to go, I would have to ask for assistance. I'd have to take my own sort of vision aids and things like that just to be able to choose my dinner, you know. And those things really stick out when a company really, when you feel like a company cares about you and wants you to be there. You feel like they're doing it because they want to, not because accessibility is something they should be doing. It's not a tick box. I understand for things like Purple Tuesday, it kind of is a tick box, but as long as you carry on with those things and you keep up the practices, then it really becomes personal for a lot of people.
Well, that's a really easy thing for restaurants to change, isn't it?
Absolutely.
How difficult is it to print some more menus that are appropriate, that are a bit bigger?
Yeah, and it's not like you're going to get 20 blind people all going in at the same time. You're not going to need, you know, the same quantity of regular menus that you would have available for blind people. But even just having one or two to know that someone could come in and make that decision. Because if I were to go out on my own with my children, for example, I would have to rely on my 7-year-old to read me the menu and to choose her and her brother's dinner for them. Do you know what I mean? And it's, as you say, it's a small change that would have a massive impact.
Really would. You kind of feel like if you go into one of those shops and it's really difficult and you don't buy anything and you go somewhere else and you've got all the shopping bags, you need to go back in like Julia Roberts and you go, big mistake, huge.
Absolutely.
Look at this.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because it's literally that, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Really, really is. And I've had people, when I've pointed out things like places that do large print menus, there's a lovely little restaurant, I say little, there's a restaurant just in Malso, just outside Milton Keynes, called the Carrington Arms. And we go there frequently for our anniversaries and things. And whenever we tell them that I'm coming, they print out a large print menu for me. So although they don't have one to keep because their menu changes quite frequently, they'll always print one out and it'll be on the table when I arrive. And to tell other blind people that I know that they could go there and experience that, I know for a fact they're going to go. A lot of the people that follow me on my social media are there because they're also visually impaired, and to know that I could pass that information on and someone else would use it is really important as well.
It's wonderful, but it shouldn't be the exception.
I agree.
Yeah.
Completely.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today, and congratulations to all of the shops around here that have made a little difference. It's these little little changes that build up over time to make life easier. But hopefully we'll start the ball rolling and things will continue to improve every year.
Absolutely. Fingers crossed. Thank you so much for having me.